this is Ryan Fee for UpswingPoker.com, and what I want to do in this video is talk about my favorite ever poker book. This is Applications of No-Limt Hold'em, a guide to understanding theoretically sound poker by Matthew Janda. And yeah, highly recommend it. I read this book many years ago now. I think it was released. When did this book come out? I don't know. I think I read it like 3 or 4 years ago. But yeah, it's just good stuff, really. You know, I guess sort of maybe the challenge with it is that it's again, like it says, it's theoretical. So, you know, some parts of it can be easily applied, but a lot of it has to be sort of supplemented. Like, you know, this book is going to be more powerful in the hands of somebody who's already a winning player or who already sort of has a strategy outlined than I think like a total beginner. That said, if any of you guys have the lab, I think that if you want to go deeper into your understanding, I think that that this guy is great, because I think that you'll start to see a lot of the a lot of the stuff that's in the lab. Sort of you'll understand the theoretical concepts behind it, because this book does a really good job of outlining that. And I'm just going to go over the table of contents real quick and talk about some of the things I like about it. So, you know, it's got introduction, and then the first, you know, if any of you guys watch my video, you guys can't see it, but can we do it like this? Can you see that? There you go. The introduction, calculating pot odds. The very first, like, you know, sort of strategy section, calculating pot odds. If you've ever watched or listened to me discuss a hand, I'm doing pot odds calculations all over the place. Super, super important. Love that he kicks this book off with that. And then, you know, so sort of from there he goes into equity, and sort of he talks about in his own way, I think he calls it retaining, what does he call it? Retaining equity against strong ranges. And we would say raw equity versus realized equity. He says hand signaling to see additional cards. We would call it really hand ranking. So, for instance, versus a C bet on he uses a similar example, but I think their example is King 7-3. They think that he would suggest that 9-8 suited backdoor flush draw has more equity, or rather more realized equity, or has a better chance to win the pot ranked higher than a hand like pocket sixes. Our example that we've given, I would agree, and an example that commonly comes up in the Upswing Lab is a hand like, let's say, 8-7 is a better hand to call on King 7-3 than a hand like pocket eights, because again, 5 outs to improve backdoor flush draw, stuff like that. Breaks down EV versus expected value. He talks a lot about polarized versus condensed ranges, and some of the stuff is in there is stuff again that you guys are doing, that you're applying, but you know. You might see see fallacies. You might think that there's fallacies in it, but like this book could like understand. I'm gonna try not to get too deep into it. We maybe talk about a couple things, but I could just sit here and talk about this for hours. I just want to let you guys know about this video, about this book in this video, and if it seems like something you're interested in, go buy it. Let's see, making our opponent indifferent to bluffing. I think we definitely talk about that a lot in the lab. About, in some sense, what we're trying to do is have a fold in a situation of given bet size that will make it very difficult for our opponent to bluff us. You know, the theoretical sense of bluffing, but then again, we're sort of playing an exploitable strategy, exploitable style, where sort of what we're actually doing is being very sensitive to what our opponents are doing, then playing really loose and hero calling or hero folding. He goes into pre-flop, and like again, he's got like a whole. Can we really put this up here? Will this work? So you can maybe pause the video here, but he's got a whole section on pre-flop, and again, it's all designed to be theoretical, right? So it's not going to be like the lab where it's like your ranges. He's going to talk about the merits of 3-betting or certain hands, of what the mathematics behind how a 4-bet would work, stuff like that. Does a lot on bet sizing. Doesn't do it. It's like not from a solver approach. It's more from like sort of a theoretical approach. But I know a lot of you guys are digging into. And bet sizing is really, really tricky. I know a lot of you guys are interested in more sort of advanced bet sizing stuff, and this could definitely give you some ideas. I definitely love the bet sizing stuff in this book. Definitely give you some ideas for mixing it up based on position. I think it's again a good starting place to tend to use the labs. Lab has somewhat fixed bet sizes around. We have like I think a third in a couple spots, but it's mostly 2/3, 3/4, but occasionally bigger. But I think definitely thinking very deeply about bet size, because there's so many unique situations, and sort of a small, big, or very big bet size could be the best size for that, the best option for that situation. He goes into again like a whole post flop section, breaks it down by board, in position, out of position, and this is a lot of the stuff. Again, a lot of the stuff that you'll see in the lab. But if you want to go deeper, if you want that theoretical understanding, this can this can definitely help. He also breaks it down by sort of single raise and 3-bet pots. Talks about how to play versus different size c-bets. Also talks about, I know a lot of you guys are very interested in, and again, coming from a theoretical perspective, is having the balanced range, sort of bluffing enough and like having enough value bets, and how do you sort of balance those ranges out? Again, the lab tends to try to focus a little bit more on what people are actually doing and be exploitable, whereas this book will sort of give you, again, sort of the fundamental, like if you are going to raise Jack 9-5 flop, what kind of hands should you have, and how should they be balanced, and stuff like that. Then at the end, he goes into, he really, it's a very impressive book because he covers so many topics. Towards the end, after sort of all the post-flop stuff, talks about removal, which is obviously big for us. He talks about overbetting the river. He talks about, sort of value bet the bluff. We've talked about this, I think, probably in the lab, but he talks about how much you should be value betting versus how much you should be bluffing based on given bet sizes, which would so then extrapolate to the merits of bigger bet sizes, overbetting. Talks a little bit about removal, and I like what he does. He will sort of, it's sometimes difficult to talk about both removal and bigger bet sizes at the same time, even though they're they're very related. But it's important, I think, first to understand removal. Like for instance, if you have top pair, far less likely your opponent has top pair, and then again, just like sort of toy games where he'll play around a little bit with like let's say you're going to go all in for $1 million X pot on the river. Why should you do that, and with what range should you do that, and what about maybe just betting full pot or 2x pot? He plays around with stuff like that, and I think that again, bet size itself is really solid. Talks a bit about the multi-way pots. That's sort of towards the end, but I think it's like good sort of introductory stuff, and definitely good to be thinking about, given how challenging those pots can be. And then even plays around with shallow and deep stack play. So listen, like the long and short of it is that if you guys are interested in, how many pages? There's about 400 pages. And by the way, you don't have to read the whole thing. Like a lot of the value is sort of in the first, 50 pages or something. And there's probably like a couple other sections, but again, you've got there's like a sweet table of contents where it's like, if you're interested about flop bets in position, boom, just go read that. It's definitely, it certainly builds on each other, but I would say a ton of it could sort of stand alone if there's something one specific thing that you're particularly interested in. So yeah, anyway, if you were just basically like, if you were really into just geeking out over some poker strategy and you want to get into like sort of like the theoretical, nature of the game, of, like not just our strategy, but like of the game itself. That's kind of the cool thing, about theory is that like sort of theory is theory. And then it's like sort of about how you then apply it, but the theory will tend to sort of be the same. I guess the application is really the interpretation of the theory. But yeah, honestly, great book. Couldn't have said it better myself. And that's something you're into. I would definitely check it out.